Now the podcast starts.
Hello everybody and welcome, or if you are returning to listen to us, welcome back to the podcast in which sometimes we talk about horror, sometimes we talk about other things, and sometimes we swear. My name is TD Velasquez, but you can call me Dan. I have the absolute pleasure today of being joined by Kirsty.
Hello. Hi.
And also being joined by Stella.
Hello. Here we are again.
Absolutely. This is our first episode of 2022, so Woo. I guess Happy New Year, guys.
Happy New Year.
Yeah, Happy New Year. What date is it? It's the 18th. That's not bad.
Yeah, so, you know.
It's not bad.
Happy New Year, listener. So, obviously, we're no longer sticking to a weekly release schedule. It's entirely my fault, because I have various things to sort out, and my priorities are skewed. So we're going to be coming out in an ad hoc basis for a while, but we will still be producing episodes and putting things on our Patreon feed, just not necessarily on a regular basis. Since the last episode that we did do, which was our Christmas one, talking about Doctor Sleep, excuse me, 2 of the 3 of us have had COVID since that happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
And one of us has got away with it. I don't know if anybody wants to own up to being the lucky one, but at least we're all still here.
You're all still here. You've all been riddled with disease.
Yeah. So that makes you the final girl, doesn't it?
Yes.
Wow.
As if there was ever any doubt.
Yes.
Yeah, and you know, being in the same house as somebody else with COVID is like a slasher movie level kind of challenge. Avoid getting infected while being in the same small building, and it's not going to work. But I did manage it for about 7 days.
No, that's not bad.
I managed to only go near my mum while wearing a hazmat suit. It was only when I got a bit bored and tired that I started to slack off on the precautions, and then it got me.
Yeah.
It got you.
Did you have a sort of moment like, okay, I know that he's, obviously cancelled that, but the kind of Kevin Spacey outbreak moment where you're just like, oh shit, kind of hole in my suit, or not sufficiently taped up, or that
more,
kind of moment
more
of
gaffer.
Knowing that it got you before it actually, you felt the effects.
It was more a sense of recognising my own complacency. There was a point at which I just assumed that surely I must have got it by now. If I haven't got it by now, I'm never going to get it, am I?
Yeah.
That was the point at which I started just standing a bit too close to my mum and not always being careful to put on my mask. And then I kind of realised, well, actually, I probably have got it now.
Yeah.
Haven't I? And indeed, the next morning I tested positive.
I wish the end of the sentence. And that was the point at which I started to lick my mother. It should have been the ending.
Just like throw caution to the wind.
Yes.
Yeah, sod it. Well, my daughter had it over half term. Before the half term before Christmas, the autumn one, she had it, and I was in the house with her, and I was making her drinks. I was picking up her snotty tissues because children are allergic to bins.
Yeah.
And I was making her drinks and picking up the drink that she'd had her mouth on and stuff. And I absolutely definitely wasn't washing my hands as soon as I'd put her crisp packet or her snotty tissues in the bin, and I didn't get it. So I don't know. Maybe. In zombie films or in things, there's that one person you need their blood because they're immune to everything.
It's you.
That's me.
It's you, yeah.
Yeah, you're the girl with all the gifts.
Yeah.
Cart you off to a lab. Cut you open.
Yeah.
Sacrifice you for the rest of society.
Nice one. But
you're not worth it.
the good news is
True.
we're all here. And and even though I now know loads of people who've been infected, I don't know anybody who's got seriously ill from it. So that's a good sign.
That's
Hence,
positive.
I was able to go out to the cinema in Manchester the other day and actually see Stella in person.
Hey, in the 3 full dimensions.
Yeah, we still couldn't hug or anything.
No, it's still like, Hello.
And you introduced me to your friend Laura, whose face I had to imagine for the first 10 minutes because she had a mask on. And then when she actually took the mask off, I was like, whoa, you look nothing like I imagined. But okay, hello. But it was a really wonderful experience to just be able to go into Manchester, see friends, and go to a movie. So,
do something quite normal. Just go and watch a film.
Yeah.
That was nice.
Only with a mask on, but it's
with
fine.
a mask on.
And kind of, appropriate with a slasher movie. I remember going to see Scream 2 in the 90s, and people actually had, the ghost face mask on. So it's almost traditional to actually wear a mask in this kind of situation. So,
well, in the late 90s, I guess would have been like 99, 2000. I had a proper ghost face costume. I remember I had it on my bedroom wall in one of my houses at uni, like strung up on the wall, and Owen hated it, but it was there. I know I had one, but I don't know where it's gone. I think I might somewhere between then and now, which is like 20 years ago. I've obviously lent it to someone, haven't I? For Halloween or something, I think, and it's long gone. But the place that I thought it might be in my house, I went and had a look, and it's not there. So if anybody listening, if you've got my ghost face mask, can I have it back, please?
So I think we're segueing into the topic of the episode, which is obviously the new film Scream, which is just called Scream. And I have to say that I'm kind of annoyed with the timing, just because the perfect title for this episode of the podcast would have been Scream and Scream Again. Because I'm sure we're going to talk about the original Scream as well as the current Scream. However, there is a film called Scream and Scream Again, and Howard and I did an episode about it. So it would be really confusing to have two podcast episodes with basically the same name.
Yeah.
So I'll think of something else to call this later.
Brackets. Not that one.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. Because just like Scream 1996 and Scream 2022 would be a really dull title, but there we go. What we're going to do is we'll talk a little bit first, I think, about our connections to the franchise. Not go into much detail. I'm sure it's likely that we'll do more episodes about this franchise in the future, so we can do that then. But I think to give context for our thoughts on the new Scream film, it'd be useful to kind of just report what our history with it is, and I think it's best to start with you, Stella, because when we talked about our favourite and scariest movies, I think your favourite movie was Scream, wasn't it?
It was.
So you are the franchise expert.
Yeah, it's always my answer to that question because it's true. And yeah, so just to quickly say why again. I mean, obviously it's a great film, but the day that I went to see it, I was 15, and it was the day, when you get sent home from school to revise for 2 weeks for your GCSEs, and you all write on your shirts and stuff like that, and it was that day. So we all got booted out of school, and I went home, and my boyfriend rang me and was like, we're going to go to the cinema. So we went to the cinema to watch it. So it's just such a clear memory of that day, how that felt to be finally leaving school and then going watching Scream. And I obviously really enjoyed the film when I saw it, but I was that annoying person who goes and sees a film and then is just obsessed with it and won't stop talking about it. And but I think when it got released to VHS, and I pestered my parents to buy it for me. And you remember, back then buying a movie that's just been released on VHS was expensive. But yeah, just to shut me up, they bought it me on video. So yeah, it's really deeply connected to that bit of my life, that really nice, exciting moment where you leave school and you set off on your journey. So yeah, the first film just always puts me right back there.
Nice.
So that's why.
It's just triggered a memory. I didn't see it when it came out at the cinema, but I'm the same age as you, Stella, and I do remember walking up the road from school on one of those final days and seeing a promo poster for Scream in a bus stop, and just that image of Drew Barrymore's face being really striking. How about you, Kirsty?
I'm a bit vague on details. I can't remember. I don't think I saw it in the cinema when it came out. but I know that I would have seen it probably very soon after its home release, I think. Unlike Stella, I'm not a massive fan of the franchise, partly because slashers have never really been my type of horror. And I think, though, I remember having the impression, because it was way more gory than I was expecting it to be. I mean, that kind of, opening with Drew Barrymore is quite visceral, isn't it? And I kind of it sort of became, because of the age that I was when I saw it, like an education into what a slasher was, which I know is kind of weird because it's meant to be sort of kind of postmodern comment on slashers, but it very much was like, oh, okay, this is what a slasher is, and this is the rules of the slasher, and whatever. So I think I saw Scream 1 and I saw Scream 2. I don't really remember any of the others, and I couldn't kind of hand on heart say that I'd seen them, to be honest. But I enjoyed, certainly I enjoyed them. But like I said, kind of slashers aren't my kind of thing. But I do remember the kind of cultural impact of them, though. I remember having, when I was at university, having a phone call from an unknown number, obviously some other student somewhere else in halls, basically putting on the voice saying, what's your scary movie? What's your favourite scary movie even? Which I hung up promptly, or probably told them to, F off, and then hung up. And obviously I was aware that, whenever it comes to this particular one, I knew that Stella was really excited. But it wasn't one that I thought to myself, okay, I must go and see this. It was just because it happened to come out when it did, and I had the opportunity to go to see a film, that it was the obvious choice out of the ones that were available.
Yeah.
So, there we go.
Well, then you sent us a message about it, which didn't give anything away, but indicated that you'd enjoyed it. So
yes, very much.
That was very reassuring, and made me look forward to having this conversation. Again, as I say, I didn't see the Scream at the cinema, the original film. I saw it shortly afterwards on rental video. I remember very specifically, this just came back to me today, that it must be pretty good, because I enjoyed it, even though the ending was ruined for me by the bloke in front of me in the queue in the video shop who said, it's good at the end when ... And I was like, stop, please don't tell me. And it's too late. But I still loved it, and saw it several times. And then when Scream 2 came out, it was re-released at a local cinema, so I did see it on the big screen, the original. And it is the only horror franchise, and possibly the only franchise, where I've seen every single instalment at the cinema.
Okay.
Stella, you've seen every one of them at the cinema as well, I think.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you think you did that, Kirsty, or might you have just caught up with them on TV or whatever? If you're not really sure.
Yeah, I wouldn't have seen. I don't ever. I might have seen the second one in the cinema.
Right.
But I don't recall seeing any of the other ones at all. So, so don't come back to me on details about plotting of the. Was it is it 3 and 4 or technically?
There's 4. Yeah.
Okay, so I have no idea about those ones. So like I imagine I probably would remember if I'd seen them, which no recollection.
Well, the Scream 4 is on Netflix now. You could go back.
The response from my husband when we came out on Saturday after seeing it was, "Oh, let's go back and watch the whole franchise again."
See, that's right. That's the right
but are they all on streaming platforms, or is it hard to track them down? Because that's what my
probably hard right now. Because the original was on IMDb TV, which is free until recently, but it's disappeared now, probably because they want people to pay for it in the wake of the new film.
You see, I wondered though, because just before we get into any spoilery discussions, and I know it's not a spoiler at all, but because they mention Netflix in the film a couple of times, I thought I wonder, are they or at least in the States, are they all lined up on Netflix, kind of ready to go? Because you know.
Right.
Maybe on their one, yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know.
No, it makes
Yeah,
sense.
but 4's on our one.
Can I just ask, Kirsty, so Sven had seen all the films before, had he, or some of them?
Yes, I think so. Again, we
Because
didn't have a huge conversation about it.
Right.
before.
It's just the one intriguing question that none of the three of us will be able to answer is how would this film work if you hadn't seen the others or you didn't know about them at all?
I ended up having this conversation with a student on Monday who'd seen it, and I couldn't kind of, in the context of the conversation, I couldn't work out whether or not they had seen it.
Right.
Seen the original or not. It would seem like, again, I feel like we're verging into the kind of territory of talking about the film, but it would seem odd for somebody to see it not knowing that it's part of the franchise, but then the branding of it and we talked about this before, didn't we? And the idea that it's called Scream 2020 or 2022 rather than 96 is confusing from a franchise perspective, isn't it? It's the naming of it, so although, there might be some oblivious viewers.
Possibly. Well, we'll get to that. So before we talk about the new film, just Stella, did you like the sequels? As you follow the franchise through, could you let us know how you felt about them?
The second one, Scream 2, I loved to bits. It's really, really good. I think it's probably a better movie than Scream, even though Scream's my favourite. I think Scream 2 is probably a more exciting movie. I don't know. That's just something that somebody said to me, like, do you think Scream 2 might be a better movie? And I was like, maybe. Scream 3 is okay. It's probably about 20 minutes too long. There's a bit of a lull in the middle, and the big reveal at the end is just a bit, it's a bit of a reach. Scream 4, I'd not seen it for years, and then I rewatched it in anticipation of Scream 5. Let's just call it Scream 5. And I rewatched Scream 4 because it popped up on Netflix, even though the DVD is on my shelf. And I was surprised. I guess, is surprised the right word? Yeah, I think so. I was surprised at how good Scream 4 is, and I think I'd just forgotten. But yeah, I watched it again, and I was like, oh, this is fucking great. And it's really intense. It's really exciting. The set piece deaths are really good. I thought the teenage characters in Scream 4 were all really well drawn, really well written. So yeah, I think they're all dead good. Scream 3 is probably the worst of the lot, but it's got that good sort of movie within a movie situation going on.
I think I'll concur with that. And Scream 4 is the only one of them that I've only seen once. I saw it when it came out. I've never gone back.
Yeah.
I did enjoy it. Fine, but and in fact I've not watched any of them for many years, but I've seen the first three, all of them, more than once. The first one several times. And I don't know if you feel the same way, Stella, just at our age. It just felt like a kind of seminal movie. It's speaking directly to us, kind of about us, especially Scream 2, where they're actually sixth form. Well, they don't call it sixth form in America, obviously, but they're like our age, and they were film students, and they were having those conversations. And then also it was like a gateway to kind of loving Buffy. It was like, it was actually my introduction to teenage horror, and obviously you've got Sarah Michelle Gellar in Scream 2. That was the first time I ever saw her. It's really special to me. I had the poster of Scream 2 on the wall of this very room because, tragically, listener, I still have the same bedroom. It's not always been the case, but I've kind of come back to it over the years. And I just was looking out the window last night when it was actually quite a spooky, misty, atmospheric horror night, and I suddenly realised I used to have the poster of Scream 2 there, and was kind of transported back to my youth.
Your youth.
So it was really special, and all that kind of informed. Well, but it lent an extra poignancy to Scream 4 and Scream 5 because both of those films are weirdly doing the same job, bringing back these characters much older and kind of trying to do a reboot.
So one of the things that I think when I was thinking about before that, I don't feel in any way kind of qualified enough to kind of make this assertion, but whether, kind of whether or not Scream, and then particularly I can say particularly Scream 2, because that's where it becomes much more meta, doesn't it? Because then you have the kind of the stab within the world, and then so stab that becomes the kind of, it's a cipher, isn't it? It's sort of lagged, isn't it, in the franchise, in that you kind of go, okay, well, stab is Scream, and now they're talking about stab, and then if they're talking about so in this version they're talking about stab 4, aren't they? So is that a commentary on Scream 4, the criticisms that they make of it? But anyway, so wider point was, is Scream the first kind of the franchise that kind of starts to do meta horror in a way that's become much more kind of prevalent in the last kind of 20 years, which is a type of horror that I really, really enjoy. I really enjoy horror that's about horror. We talked about Cabin in the Woods and things like Tucker and Dale versus Evil, and kind of all the very, very kind of meta stuff, and whether or not that Scream really marks that kind of first kind of wave of that, or if there's something that predates that, I can't think of off the top of my head.
I'd say so.
The only predecessor I can think of, which I haven't even seen, is Wes Craven's New Nightmare.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
And lots of the commentary of Scream says that, well, the more negative commentary of Scream says basically Wes Craven is just doing stuff that he'd already done in an earlier film that nobody liked, and this is just the one that that broke through. But it's weird because I think it kick-started kind of horror films being a commentary on horror, but it also kick-started horror itself, because there wasn't much of a horror cinema around before Scream, the kind of glut of 80s horror movies had slowed and kind of been forgotten about. And I was not long into the process of being a horror fan at the time.
Same.
The only such film I've seen before Scream was Halloween, so it's not like I had a deep knowledge to play on, but the movie does this trick of being really accessible and easy to follow.
So it's sort of following on from what you were saying, that there had been a lull in horror, in Hollywood horror. The 80s sort of age was over, and the early 90s Hollywood was all about the action movie, and it was for the most part not really aiming films at that mid-teen audience. Now it seems like a funny one to link it to, but the Romeo and Juliet film with Leonardo DiCaprio and what's the face, that had come out.
Jamie Kennedy's in that, isn't he?
Yeah, and that had done very, very well, and done very, very well with a young audience. And there was a market research study done at the time that was showing that there was this essentially a new generation of teens of that age who have disposable income and time on their hands, and they're all very media savvy, and they're all very, very cynical. And they found that more cinema goers were female, and that had been quite a dramatic shift, because it used to be assumed that the majority of cinema goers were young males, but they found it was young females, teens with money, who were media savvy and cynical, and Scream was written for that audience, and Kevin Williamson and Wes Craven were aware of all this. I think the marketing research had been done by a video games company. I think they'd done it, because they were like, there's a whole pocket of people here that's just being ignored. So the Scream was written for, essentially, I fit that demographic to when I was 15 to a T. So that's kind of why it happened.
That's why it resonated so powerfully.
Yeah,
okay.
So it's literally written for me. It's like, I'll take that. Thank you very much.
There we are. Worked well. So let's go on to talking about Scream 5 then, and we'll break in a moment to hear a little bit of a recording, because Stella and I, when we went to the cinema to see it, we recorded our thoughts going in, and we recorded our thoughts coming out, and then the three of us will elaborate on those thoughts further. Listener, we're going to discuss, after you hear this little excerpt, we're going to go into the Scream 5 discussion. It will be spoiler free for the most part. If there are things that we want to talk about that demand spoilers, there'll be a little section at the end, and I'll put time codes in, and I'll make sure the listener is warned before we go there. But for the I think there's plenty that's interesting about this movie that you can talk about without talking about spoilers. So we'll see where it goes in terms of time. But for now, listen to me and Stella outside the View Cinema in Salford, and we'll see you in a minute. Okay, so here we are. We're all masked up inside the View Cinema in Salford Quays. It's myself and Stella. Say hello, Stella.
Hello, Stella.
With our friend Laura, and we're about to see Scream. How excited are you, Stella?
I'm struggling to stand still.
For reasons of excitement.
Reasons of excitement. I have been for a week. It's all good. But
Excellent.
Yeah, I'm super excited.
Stella's holding the microphone, so you might even be able to hear the sounds of her excitement, listeners. So, have you got any particular hopes for this, Stella?
I hope that well, I'm torn. I want the central three to stay alive, but I also think it would be a brave move if they take out any of the big three. And I had a thought on the tram that I think it might be Martha, Randy's sister. That's what I'm placing my bet as this evening.
I will. I'm going to second you on that. Let it be Martha. Bring back Heather Matarazzo. I don't know what she's done since Hostel Part 2, but she probably needs the work. So God bless her. Let's see Heather. All right. Nice one. Well, we'll go in now, listener, and we'll see you on the other side, and you'll hear whether our expectations were met.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
This isn't funny, Amber.
Would you like to play a game, Tara?
Doors unlocked. All doors locked. Doors unlocked.
Hello?
It's happening. 3 attacks so far. Do you have a gun?
I'm Sydney Prescott. Of course I have a gun.
Something about this one just feels different.
Samantha? I know who you are. I've been through this a lot. This is your life now, which means that whoever this is going to keep coming for you. You ready for this? Never.
No, stop. Wait. There's certain rules to surviving.
The attacks were all on people related to the original killers. Whatever his link is to our past, it's pulled us all back here. And I won't sleep until he's in the ground.
Hello, Sydney. It's an honor.
Right, hello everybody. We've just come out of Scream 5, aka Scream something.
Scream without
Scream
5.
Scream
22.
Whatever. Stella, how do you feel?
I don't know. I really enjoyed it. I need to absorb all of that, I think, before I have any final decisions.
But do you feel enthused?
Yes.
Good. I feel satisfied. I was quite happy with that. But yeah, there are more complicated thoughts that I'm sure we'll go into at a later point.
Yeah, there's a lot that needs unpacking with that.
I'm happy. The thing about the Scream movies to me was that they were kind of unique genre in a way. They're what I think of as feel-good horror.
Yeah.
You come out of them having had a laugh. There's usually a cool indie song at the end, and you just go, all right, cool. And you did that.
Yeah, it ticked all the boxes.
Yeah.
But there's things that need to be discussed.
Definitely. We'll go into that.
Right.
Thank you, Stella. What a pleasure.
Time for bed.
So, having just heard myself and Stella's excited initial response to the film, it's now time for us to go into detail about the new Scream. This movie is directed by Matt Bettinelli-Olpin and Tyler Gillett, from a screenplay by James Vanderbilt and Gary Busick. Not to be confused with Gary Busey. The original 4 Scream movies were of course directed by the late, great Wes Craven and mostly written by Kevin Williamson, who is an executive producer on the new film. Now then, I think you can gauge from our initial reaction that Stella and I were pretty positive on it. Would you agree, Kirsty?
Yes. I think you know what struck me was how Stella very much has the same reaction as me, which is like yes, but I need to think about it. Don't ask immediate things, because you know those take a while. But
yeah, do you know, I couldn't go to sleep that night, so it was quite late, wasn't it? So the showing was at 8:30, so the film probably got started at about 9:10. It's a 2-hour long film, so I probably got home at about 10 to 12. I had a drink of water. It's like, right, you know, at work tomorrow, go to bed. So I reckon I was in bed by 12:30, and I was just lying there and I just could not sleep. I just kept thinking about Scream things and being like, oh, about that bit, and there's that bit, and that as well. My brain was just like, shut up. I can't sleep. Couldn't deal with it.
It worked differently for me. It obviously went into my brain, but I didn't have any problem sleeping. My subconscious processed it, and I know it did because I woke up with the Scream theme music in my head, which isn't in the film.
It's not, is it? I did miss it.
That's what it was missing.
Yeah. The only bit you got was the little guitar cluck when Dewey walks into Woodsboro. You got the little dang, dang, dang. And that was it.
That's Dewey's theme music from Scream 2, which is actually they ripped it off from another film then. It was actually written for John Travolta's character, and Clang, by the way, Ian's not here, but he's telling me about how he interviewed John Travolta, so you know, just to get him the spirit of him in the room.
Clang.
Yeah, it was written for John Travolta in the film Broken Arrow, the John Woo film. So possibly. I think that Marco Beltrami, who wrote the scores for all 4 previous films, wasn't involved with this one, probably because the directors wanted to use their own creative people, and they did their best to reference the music from the earlier films, just not the stuff that he wrote. So I did really appreciate there's a moment where they used the Nick Cave song, Red Right Hand.
I liked that.
Which, I don't know about you, Stella, but whenever I hear it associated with Peaky Blinders, I kind of bristle a little bit.
I've never watched Peaky Blinders, and I never will, because so many of my students write their essays on Peaky Blinders, and now I hate it.
Yeah.
And I mean, you know, all the people that are working on it, I would like you to keep your jobs, but oh god, yeah.
It's good, but they do use Red Right Hand as the theme tune, and you know, there's a whole big thing in it of using a kind of anachronistic music that doesn't reflect the period that it's set in. And I was thinking, yeah, great song, good to hear it. However, it belongs to Scream.
It does.
So
it does.
But you know, that's just me dealing with my own personal issues. So, Stella and Kirsty, you've both got complex feelings about this movie, even though generally enthusiastic. Why don't we go into that a little bit? Let's start with all the stuff that we can say without hitting spoilers. Oh, and I just need to rebuke myself. I should have mentioned in that recording that part of our prediction did come true. Heather Matarazzo is in the film, and
Yay.
isn't that wonderful? Is she the killer? Well, I certainly would not reveal that. Certainly not in the non-spoiler section, but she is definitely in the film. I think She's can there. Safely say so. That's wonderful. But so further thoughts. I think it's only fair that you go first, Stella, as I think you've been processing this.
I think you've earned it.
Yeah. Right. Well, I think the first comments is I was just concerned, like you are with any sort of sequel or even a remake or anything, that it's like, oh, please don't be shit. Please don't be shit. Please be really good. Please be good. Or at least just, at least be passable. And it was really good. I did really enjoy it. I felt like it did all the things that you'd want from a Scream movie. It did a couple of different things that I was unsure of at the start of the movie, but by the end I was like, yeah, all right. I said before I felt all the teens in Scream 4 were really well drawn and well written. On the flip side, the negative side, I did feel that the teens in this one, in Scream 5, weren't particularly as well realised as some of the other, teenage friend group who we've seen in some other films. And that did kind of bother me as we were going through, because I was thinking, I don't care about any of these people. And I wasn't upset by anybody's passing. And I think that was the only thing that I felt could have been improved upon. But in terms of everything else that you want from the Scream movie, Ghostface being a moron, Ghostface getting a little bit beaten up but not quite, him jumping out on people, the set piece slasher deaths where, setting it all up and are they going to get there on time and all that sort of stuff. It did, it was just like tick, 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 did everything that I wanted it to do. But I think my overwhelming thing is I really, really enjoyed it, and I've got written here, I need to see it again because I'm sure there's lots of stuff that I missed. There was some as you expect from a Scream film, just loads of little reference points to either other past Scream films or other horror films that was just constantly nibbling away there. You've got the usual film geek stands up and delivers a monologue on film, and I thought that was all right. That was up to date. But yeah, I just didn't care about the teens.
They were a touch generic, weren't they?
Yeah. They're just teenagers, aren't they?
Yeah.
I don't remember the teens from Scream 4 at all, so it's not. I didn't really hold that against the movie, but maybe if I went back and watched the other films...
Yeah, go and have a look.
I thought the ones in this film were likeable enough, but they were just kind of types.
Yeah.
And they were mostly kind of well cast, and I cared a bit for them. But I wasn't ever really heartbroken like I was when a certain character gets killed in Scream 2, who I really personally identified with, and was just distraught for days.
I wouldn't let that go either. Just kind of going on and on about it.
Oh, that's fun. But I don't know why I'm being coy about saying who it was. You can find out who survives the Scream films just by looking at the poster of the next Scream film and which faces are on it. But so how about you, Kirsty?
I really enjoyed it. I don't think my first sort of overriding kind of thought walking out was that was a lot of fun. I as I said before, I like meta horror, and I like the fact that the kind of film increasingly has this discussion around kind of rebooting, or producing what they call it, a requel. Yeah, there kind of has a discussion around kind of relaunching franchises and how what that needs to be in order to satisfy both the old fans and drawing new fans and all that. And I thought that was really kind of I thought it was kind of on the nose, but in the way that I expected it to be, if that makes any sense. It's kind of what you expect from a Scream film, is to have a conversation with audiences about kind of what they expect. And I like the kind of the emphasis, and again, no spoilers, but the emphasis on the kind of the way that social media plays into the way that fans kind of react to films now generally, and how they can kind of have quite strong reactions to things, and then kind of can take their own steps to kind of readdress issues that they felt with them. And again, having not seen Scream 4, I didn't know, but I felt very strongly that I was watching a film that was having a kind of a conversation about what was wrong with the last film and why the last film didn't work, perhaps.
Well,
I think Scream 4 is a commentary on the remake, isn't it, really? 'Cause
Okay.
Sydney says in the final moments, when it's all sorted out, she says something like, "You can't remake the original," and then walks off.
Yeah.
So it's
I think it was drawing inspiration very plainly from the kind of more toxic fandom stuff that's happening, not so much in the horror genre, but around franchises like Star Wars and Ghostbusters.
Yeah.
And they talk about Stab 4, and they say that one that was directed by the Knives Out guy. So it's like, So it's like, all right, in this universe, The Last Jedi didn't happen, but Rian Johnson did do Stab 4 and really annoyed loads of people.
Yeah. I really enjoyed that kind of element of it, and I really, I absolutely hear your kind of comments on the kind of the 2D-ness of the teenagers in particular, because of course they're the new characters, aren't they? So it struck me as the film was sort of doing it's a complex balancing act, isn't it, between, as they say, they call them in the film, the legacy characters and the new characters. I didn't feel that it was a balance that always got right. I saw, again, not spoiling, but I saw the kind of the reveal coming from quite a long way away. In terms of, kind of who the killers were. And so, I felt quite smug when it was like, oh yeah, of course. But it seemed like in doing that, again, no spoilers, it was trying to be both similar and different. Kind of going, okay, it needs to be like the other Scream films, but we also need to acknowledge that things have moved on and that representation issues are going to play into the way in which, because the conversations around who the killers are always done in a very fixed way in the film. My one biggest criticism, I think, was that there were times, and I'm aware that it was very much sort of centered around Dewey, is that it seemed to be very earnest and take itself a bit seriously in moments.
I felt that about the lead character. I felt that she was a bit earnest. Quite right from the start. It was like, I think she needs a bit more.
Yeah, and I felt like the like, where the mum, who is the mum? Where is the mum? Why is she not like here? Her daughters in terrible trouble. Yeah. Where is
that slashes though, isn't it? The adults are useless. I mean, and I guess that's what will be picked out of this one, is that in older slashers, 70s and in the 90s, it was just teens looking after themselves. And then Scream doing the thing in the mid-90s where they flip it and you've got more than one final girl and more than one person survives and the women can work together and the final girl has sex and all that kind of stuff. And I think now, rather than it just being teens versus killer, we've got teens and adults versus killer. So it's Scream, reversing or messing with those rules again, which is, like I said, it's on the nose and it can be a bit sharp sometimes, but it's like you said, it's what you expect from a Scream movie, and to walk the line between we're going to show you the rules and we're going to play with them, but we're still going to adhere to them at the same time. And I think with such a time difference, 10-11 years since the last one, and with Wes Craven no longer with us, it's quite a brave, bold move, which is why I was saying before, I was like, oh God, don't be shit. Please don't be rubbish. I need you to not be rubbish. And it wasn't, so I think it did do everything, but is the on-the-nose stuff maybe a bit too much? I don't know. That's maybe not what I want to ask.
Maybe you could just done with it at those points.
It's not actually that enlightening, maybe.
Yeah, or just sticking its tongue in its cheek a bit more firmly.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the earnestness comes from, I suppose I'll put my cards on the table. I really enjoyed the film. I was very satisfied with it, but it does have a number of issues, and one of them is that the lead actress is slightly weak. I think she's okay, but there's a sort. I put my finger on it as that she's a bit nice. There's something kind of nice about her, but the script and the story actually requires her to be a bit more edgy.
Yeah, because she's supposed to spend time doing loads of drugs and abandoning her family. And
And
you look a bit clean for that.
There's a quite bizarre scene earlier on where she turns up to comfort her little sister in hospital. And they look really convincingly like sisters, which I liked. And the sister kind of tells everyone else to go except... I'm going to use names now to stop this being really confusing. So the older sister's called Sam, the younger's called Tara. Tara says to everyone else go, but Sam stay. And she seems really comforted by Sam's presence, but then has to say to Sam, it's your fault that our lives have messed up. It's because you abandoned. So it's like, and Sam had been really, I thought, convincingly comforting in that role of the responsible big sister who came home to look after her little sister. But then you have to kind of see her as this very different, kettle of fish, essentially. And I thought that's a bit of a stretch. And I wondered if the kind of earnestness around Dewey was maybe inspired by the fact that, unlike Scream 4, this movie kind of slightly acknowledges that Courtney Cox and David Arquette were married and then split up.
Yeah.
Because in Scream 4 they're still together, aren't they? I think.
In real life or in the film?
In the film. In real life they've broken up at that point. But
in the film they're together, yeah.
Yeah. Whereas this one's like, no, we broke up in the interim. So there's and it kind of makes play the fact that he's still very much in love with her, and still dealing with his own feelings of inadequacy. So, which is weird because he was like in the first film. I think he's the biggest comedy character.
Yeah, he had no one-liners, did he?
Maybe one.
Yeah.
But that is my other kind of the big problem with the film, or my slight niggle with the film, a big niggle, is just I just thought I enjoyed it a lot. It's exciting. It's engaging. It's well made. Is it really funny enough? A lot of the jokes, I suspected these aren't really jokes, they're just references.
Yeah.
And, I find them amusing as references because I know what the references are. But if I was just to sit down and look at this as a comedy, would I go, this is a great comedy? I mean, I'm not sure necessarily any of the Scream films are great comedies, but they are funny.
But they've got some very funny moments.
The first three, even the third one, which is the weakest as horror, has got some great comedy stuff in it.
It does. I mean, I think I laughed the most at Laura screaming.
Right?
Mate, it was with us. She's any jump in a horror movie, she screams at full scream.
Yeah, she was sitting right next to me.
So, I think the most of the laugh that I was having was at Laura leaping out of her seat and covering them out. Like, anytime it started to get a little bit tense, she started going, oh my god. as soon as Ghostface jumped out, she's like, ah! Properly screaming.
As soon as we were anticipating a jump coming up, we'd all start laughing because we just knew. And that was a slight niggle I had with the. Oh, Kirsty, you look
no,
like
I was just going to say,
something.
this might be the niggle that you have. Is the bit I enjoyed is the one death which doesn't turn out to be the death when you quite expect it to, as you would expect. But they do that whole thing with the doors.
Oh, I love the doors.
They're just going to go around the kitchen, or in from the bathroom into the kitchen, and all the doors. You're going to get every time they close the door, you think he's going to be there, and then not ever. But it is, it's like, oh.
Laura was writhing around in her seat at that point.
So great.
That is my niggle because it repeatedly does that gag whereby somebody opens a door and it blocks the view. So you think they're going to close it and it's going to reveal the killer there, like it would in any horror film, and often it doesn't, and it's really entertaining. But they do it over and over again, and I don't. Maybe you two feel different, but I felt like it was building up to, because they'd done that gag so often. There had to be then a bit where they did it, but did something really clever and unexpected with it. And I don't think they ever did. It was just over and over again. and you think he's going to be there.
I mean, I would argue that, again, non-spoilery, the death in that case, I mean, it happens against the door, so arguably they kind of do. It's a bit of a misdirection, isn't it? Because, you know, where Ghostface appears from is not quite... Well, it's kind of, you know, there's a door involved, and then he doesn't come from the door at all, but, you know.
Okay. Well, I mean, that's fine. That was just... I didn't feel fully satiated by the way they used that, but you know, I'll watch it again and maybe spot that it's cleverer than I thought it was, which sometimes these films are.
Yeah, I really need to see it again.
Yeah, and this is great because it means I want to watch Scream 4 again now. I think the reason I never watched Scream 4 again, even though I thought it was fine, is because it's the last, and it was all right, but I want there to be something better afterwards. I didn't like the idea that this is the final one and it's not maybe everything I wanted it to be. But with this new Scream 5, I do think it was more or less everything I wanted it to be, even though there are problems with it. And I think it really nicely kind of rounded up the series, and it was. You know, it's faithful to the characters and the settings of the series. It was faithful to the tone of the earlier movies, which I came up with a phrase to describe the tone, which is exaggerated film geek reality. So everybody is talking about stuff from the real world all the time. The way that they talk about it and the way that they're really knowledgeable about the real world and also movies is maybe a bit... well, it's the kind of real life that you relate to if you're in film school or college or whatever, but maybe not just in ordinary everyday life. But it's fine, and it works really well.
Can I ask a question actually? Because I think it was you sort of starting to kind of head towards it, which is the whether or not you. I don't know. I suppose this is probably a question for Stella, but both of you is whether or not you feel like this is sort of shutting down the franchise, or if it's left it open for more. Because I felt there was certainly kind of a moment towards the end where there was sort of kind of hinting towards the fact that this is kind of, we need to leave this now. There seemed to be a discussion in the film in a meta way about the fact that the franchise wouldn't continue. But I'm sure if it makes loads of money.
I think... Well, I said before, it's quite a bold move to even do it. And I think if it's done well, which all the reports it is doing well, I suspect that Neve Campbell and company are done with it. Because there's an article, it was in Total Film, I think, about how getting that, the central legacy characters back was a bit, they were unsure about it. And that it took them seeing like full scripts and stuff for them to commit. I wouldn't be surprised if they do another one. I don't want them to. I don't think. And the reason for that is, obviously, leave it alone. Like, don't ruin it. It's been loads of fun, but also the other Scream properties. So Scream, the TV series, the MTV one, and the VH1 one. I really enjoyed those. So I kind of feel like, well, horror, it's not just horror film, there's horror other media as well. And I think Scream and Ghostface as properties can go and do exist in other places. There's comics, there's graphic novels, there's TV series. So I feel like don't do another film and just redo it without Neve Campbell and company, because like you said, the commentary throughout it about requels and rebooting and legacy characters, it's just going to tie itself up in knots, and I don't want it to do that. So I think if we're going to keep Ghostface around, which I'd like to do, look to other media would be my suggestion. Directors, writers, if you're listening, to go somewhere else with it, because it's clearly has potential. The TV series I found very enjoyable, and the point you said before about diversity, the Scream Resurrection that was done on VH1 is a whole dialogue on diversity all the way through, from start to finish. So, majority of the cast are black as well, which for a slasher is highly unusual, and they make that point over and over again. Yeah. But, there's potential in other platforms for it to do more. That's what I think.
Cool.
My thought is that, we've discussed this weird thing of doing a sequel that has the same name as the previous film. I was kind of annoyed that they'd done that, but then I realised after seeing it that the fact that they're discussing requels in the movie meant that if they didn't just call it Scream, if they called it Scream 5, they would have been missing a trick.
Yeah.
But also, I think that the content of the film, to me, suggests that it's not a requel. It's pretending it is for postmodern laugh value. But the film doesn't really go... if it was a real reboot sequel, it would heavily feature the legacy characters and hopefully do something interesting with them. But it also would set up ongoing characters who could take over the franchise. And I don't feel like it did. I feel like it did just enough with Sam and the other young characters for it to work for one film. But I left it with absolutely no idea of what a sequel about just them would be. You know? I think that if it makes loads of money, there will definitely be pressure to make a sequel. But I don't know creatively what that would be, and I don't feel like this film felt any way like it was set. You know, in the way that like the 2018 Halloween film clearly gave you a sense that even if Jamie Lee Curtis didn't want to do anymore, they'd set up her daughter and granddaughter, and they could carry it on. This movie didn't feel like that to me at all. And I really hope they leave it where it is.
Yeah. I think it's a fitting ending, isn't it, to well, at least from my perspective when I have anything to do with the films. But it seemed like it was, kind of like
it is,
nice.
Definitely is.
Well, what I like about it is that there are very specific callbacks to the very original film.
Yeah.
It's almost just a sequel to the original film. If you'd only seen Scream 1, you'd get everything.
Yeah,
but at the
you'd
same
be all right,
time,
wouldn't you?
there are things in it that reference the intervening films that I didn't even get. Like, Stella had to remind me that the female sheriff character was in Scream 4. I'd forgotten her totally. Also,
with her lemon squares.
And, Heather Matarazzo coming back from Scream 3 and stuff like that. So it kind of did everything right from a fan's point of view, I think.
As you're talking then, Dan, it strikes me that it's kind of similar. It gets right the things that, and again, apologies for either of you who've not seen it, but you'll just sort of trust me on this. The idea of kind of these requels. Is obviously kind of in a situation now we've got Matrix, whatever it is, whatever it's called, Resurrection. And I saw that a couple of weeks ago, and that it just felt like it was just trying to hit the same beats as the original film. It felt like very much like just rehashing and not doing anything particularly new or interesting with the source material. And I worried that that this film was going to do that in the way that the new Matrix film did, and it didn't. I feel like it offered enough new content and enough meta-ness, which the Matrix film also tried to do but didn't do very well. That it was kind of satisfying update, kind of furthering what had already been done rather than just rehashing for financial gain.
Nice one. I think maybe the difference there is that the Matrix films, the new one is Lana Wachowski, isn't it? Trying to bring some freshness to the franchise, which she's been involved with throughout, and maybe struggling to really reinvigorate her own interest. Whereas this new film, although the producers like Kevin Williamson and Mario Maddalena, who was Wes Craven's producing partner, lots of those people are still involved from the earlier franchise, but all the creative roles, the writing, the directing, the music, the photography and so on, they're all done by new people, but who are clearly seeking to emulate the style of the original and doing a really good job of it. And I've banged on about how much I like the film Ready or Not on this podcast in the past, and it's the team from that movie, and it's and you could tell from that film that it was a good match, because they have the kind of the kind of boisterous comedy horror style that the Scream franchise kind of coined in a way, and it works really well. So we've only got a few minutes left. I wanted to mention, you said you loved how, Stella, you said you loved how Ghostface is an idiot.
He's a moron.
But I've always loved the fact that in all of the Scream films, they actually do something with the fact that the killer has a ridiculous outfit, wearing a huge cape and a mask. Of course the killer runs into things all the time, gets punched, falls over.
You can't see much out of the mask. It's like,
but at the same time, yeah, exactly. But at the same time, the fact that they do that also makes them more frightening, or at least it has done to me, because it makes them feel kind of physical and real, like a real threat. You know, they're not like a slow-moving bogeyman 20 feet away who's chasing you slowly. So I really like that. And overall, I think, thumbs up to it, and I would recommend it to any fan of the previous Scream films. I would cautiously recommend it to anyone who has not seen those movies, because I think it's well done, but I don't know how well it will work if you don't know where it's coming from.
Go if you're on the fence about it because you're like, oh, not another Scream film, go and see it. It's worth it. And like you said, Kirsty, it's basically a big load of fun, isn't it?
Yeah.
You'll have a good time.
Yeah,
Great.
very much.
We're all agreed on that. But let's just do a couple of minutes of spoilers then. Warning, spoiler. Is there anything any of you want to say that can't be said in a non-spoiler way?
Not really. There was only... I just had one teeny tiny thing. I said before there was something that I was unsure about. With the visions of
Billy Loomis.
Yeah, I was concerned. It was like, don't tip this over into being supernatural.
Yeah.
Because it was like, I'm not sure. And while I loved seeing him with his weird digitally de-aged face, it's Billy. I was like, they're not going to do that, are they? But then they didn't, and I think it was best that it was sort of kept as a psychotic, a mental break type situation. And then by the end, when he gives her that little nod, there's a knife down there. I was like, Billy!
Yeah, that's great.
Oh no, I shouldn't be feeling that about him. He's a horrible person.
I was really pleased to see him, even though for the first few seconds I didn't really recognise his weird digital face.
Is that the same actor?
Yeah.
Kind of.
I suppose as we're in a spoiler section, I can say, I was glad that they killed Dewey.
They had to kill one of them,
because
didn't they?
The trouble is, the series does, after the second film, the series becomes kind of a cosy sitcom in which you know that those three characters are always safe. But they gave him good material before they killed him, and it was a great death scene.
It was a good death.
So, and also it made sense that after Sydney had just said, "I will," I think she said, "Nothing could induce me to come back to that town." Well, the only thing that could do is he dies. So it worked on that level. I did.
One of them had to go. So.
It was a shame that we didn't have a moment where they were all three together.
Yeah.
But there's loads of that in the previous 4 films. So that doesn't really bother me.
So I've got enough. And one more thing, it was Laura that noticed this, was the nod to the COVID situation where she smashes Amber over the head with the hand san. And then that's why she goes up a tree on the gas burner. And she was like, hand san, and it was like, hey.
I only put that together afterwards, that she was extra flammable due to hand sanitizer. She's
covered in alcohol.
I think that points to the idea that the producers were kind of thinking, we might be having to deal with COVID now, but by the time this film comes out, it will be all over. So people will have a bit of extra hand sanitizer in the house, and that'll be it. Alas.
It's true. I do have a big bottle like that. I do.
All right. Okay.
But my question, is it made of glass?
No, of course not.
So I was like, who has hand san in glass?
Well,
posh people who live in big houses.
Just a bit, someone who lives in a house like that. So, all right. Yeah. So I'm like looking at my little bottle from Aldi going,
Nah. Probably not going up, is it?
Nah.
No.
Squeeze it in someone's eyes, maybe.
No. Can I also just say, Jack Quaid. I want to see more of Jack Quaid and stuff. I've really enjoyed him in this. I mean, he's great in The Boys, which kind of is the main place that I know him from. But it was so nice to sort of see him do both the thing that, you know, we've kind of come to rely on him as in, you know, kind of endearing, slightly ineffectual male spare part, into you know, kind of somebody who has, you know, kind of presence and menace, and you know, kind of that worked really well. I mean, again, like I said, I could see it coming a mile off, but I was looking forward to the reveal of, you know, when that happened.
That's something I could have mentioned in non-spoiler. I think it's fairly predictable who the killers were.
Yeah.
Well, I got him. I didn't get her.
No, I got her from the very first scene. I was
she had hardly any screen time.
She just had crazy eyes.
Yeah,
and she's like the first character whose name you know, because the opening scene is Tara going Amber, Amber, Amber into the phone for ages, and it just kind of.
This is not
I would rather the killers are predictable, but it makes sense who they are, than like the end of Scream 3, where you're like, it's that guy.
Like, what?
Why?
Yeah.
So.
Yeah.
And also, the only Scream film where it's really a surprise who the killers are, and it's really well done, is the original. They're not.
Yeah, because there's no precedent, so.
No.
Yeah. They're not going to top that at this stage, and I think it was fine
that
they didn't. So that's the end of our time for our Scream 5 review. We've only got a couple of minutes. It's been a great pleasure chatting about that. I think listeners, if you've not seen it, go see it. Kirsty, I think you had a recommendation.
I did, although it's only a partial recommendation because I'm only halfway through it at the moment, but I'm really enjoying it at the moment. Archive 81 on Netflix.
I'm going to start that this weekend.
8 episodes long. It's based on a podcast. I think the TV show is produced by James Wan. You can, if you're familiar with podcast horror, as I am, you can see. I didn't listen to this as a podcast, but you can see how it's very, how the podcastness of the narrative. But it's got a very, kind of weird fiction, creepy, kind of creepy Rosemary's Baby-ish kind of vibe going on. And I'm thoroughly enjoying it. I was kind of hooked from the very beginning of the first episode, when the kind of the central character is a kind of film archivist. I was like, I am in.
Right.
So
I'm going to start that this weekend. That's my treat for really doing more marking.
Yeah.
That's
my recommendation.
So that's a recommendation well taken. Archive 81. Nice one, thank you very much. My recommendation is a bit general, but it's on my mind. Today I cancelled my subscription to Disney Plus. Just because of belt tightening.
Yeah.
And one of the things it means is that I'm going to miss being able to watch the X-Files whenever I have a slight inclination, because it's all on there, and I just suddenly realised not long ago, oh yeah, the X-Files was the thing, and there are some good horror episodes. Obviously it's a horror series in general, but particularly, it has some of those really memorable kind of one-off Monster of the Week episodes, Mr. Toombs and Ice and all that kind of thing. And some of them are really nicely efficient, sort of 45-minute. If you don't have time to watch a full horror movie, you could do worse than sticking on an episode of The X-Files, and they're all on Disney+. So.
Yay. It's a good recommendation.
All right, my friends, this has been wonderful. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dan.
Thank you.
We've had some enthusiasm, some complex thoughts as well, but a ton of highly recommendable stuff. So, my friends, welcome to 2022. I'll see you a little bit further into it, I'm sure.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
You have been listening to And Now the Podcast Starts. Produced and released by Ambidextrous Solutions Limited. Presented by Stella Gaynor, Kirsty Warrow, and T.D. Velasquez. Special thanks to Greg Hume for our original theme music, and to Brian Gorman for our original artwork. All dialogue and music clips from films, TV shows, and trailers are used for the purposes of criticism, in the spirit of fair dealing as defined in UK law, and fair use as defined in US law. No copyright infringement is intended. Please visit our home on the web, www.andnowpodcast.com, for more content and contact details. Or visit our Facebook pages at andnowpod or at Lee Cushing Pod. follow us on Twitter at @AndNowPodcast or at Lee Cushing Podcast. If you'd like to donate to us, please visit patreon.com/AndNowPodcast. And now, the podcast stops.